Welcome back, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. It's close to 2 in the morning. I'm sitting on a rusted patio chair we bolted to the roof 2 months ago, watching the perimeter with one hand on my flashlight and the other inside my jacket sleeve. The wind cuts harder at night out here, especially when the solar batteries are drained and we're saving fuel. The rooftop's quiet except for the occasional gust rattling the plastic sheeting we tied down along the HVAC units. I can see the back fence from here, and part of the garden center through the mesh of hardware cloth we wrapped over the chain link. Riley's posted up next to me, not saying much. She's the newest one. Came in from the freeway camp 8 days back. After walking nearly a full day solo, she followed our flag signal, 2 orange tarps laid in a triangle on the roof. It means approach but keep distance. She passed our observation checks, answered our questions, showed no bite marks. Now she's here. I can tell she's still figuring things out. She doesn't look scared, just alert in a way that tells me she's been through enough to stop hoping things are going back to how they were. She asked me earlier how we all ended up here. I didn't answer right away. Nobody tells the full story in one sitting. But sitting here for hours with only fence shadows and distant moans for company. I started talking, not to impress her, not to lead, just to make sure it stays real, even in my own head. Back then, we were at South Ridge High. The school was one of the early safe zones, official, fenced, with a proper guard presence. They used the football field for landings and drops, set up tents, brought in supplies. There were announcements twice a day, loudspeaker updates, even curfews. The principal tried to keep up some kind of order, made kids line up for meals, and called assemblies like that was going to make any difference. Teachers ran classes for a while too, civics, math, even gym. It didn't last. People weren't worried about missing credits. They were worried about which hallway to sleep in to avoid the smell from the bathrooms once the plumbing failed. We had power for a while, not constant, but enough to run floodlights at night and keep the perimeter clear. Soldiers patrolled the gates in teams. There were food deliveries every few days, bottled water, blankets. It looked like a plan was in place. Looked like maybe we were going to hold out long enough for real help to arrive. And then things started slipping. First, the guard rotation stopped. Same faces stayed on duty. No relief. You could see it in their posture, like they were waiting for orders that weren't coming. Then the supply trucks didn't show up. One private, barely older than me, said they were told to hold position and wait for contact. But no one was calling them anymore. I started waking up early, before light, and slipping out through a side fence that I loosened one bolt at a time over the course of a week. I just wanted to see what was happening past the wire. Most of the city was already gone. The roads were filled with stalled cars, some burned out, others stripped. I saw people, sometimes groups, sometimes just one, moving low through parking lots, watching everything. One time I saw 2 soldiers corner a man in a storefront and beat him until he stopped moving. Then they emptied his backpack and left him there. I never told anyone about that part, but I stopped believing in any plan that involved staying behind fences and waiting. So one morning, I said it out loud. I didn't beg anyone, didn't try to rally a group. I just said I'd seen another way out. I knew which parts of the city still had open paths, where the infected clustered, which roads had fewer burned vehicles. I told the people I trusted that I'd be gone in 10 minutes, and if they wanted to come, to meet me near the maintenance stairs. I didn't count on anyone showing up. 11 did. We moved fast and didn't speak. It was just after sunrise, and the wind was calm enough that we could hear footsteps from half a block away. Luis pulled a broken handcart behind him stacked with whatever we could carry. Carmen held onto a radio wrapped in cloth, just in case we could catch a signal. Evan dragged a crate of tools with one hand and held onto his dad's belt with the other. None of us were ready for what came after. We just knew we couldn't stay. We wandered around for several days, hiding in various places and abandoned warehouses, until someone saw an old familiar sign in the distance. There were no other options, so we decided to give it a try. The walk to the home depot took nearly 2 hours, We took alleys, hopped fences, and cut through parking lots. The place looked deserted when we got there. Glass windows were dusty but not smashed. The orange sign buzzed faintly above the entrance. The lot was mostly clear, just a few dead vehicles pushed to the sides. We didn't go through the main doors. Marcus found the contractor entrance, spotted the gap in the frame, and got us in with a crowbar and a bottle jack. That's how we learned he was more than a guy with a tool belt. He was the one who'd make this place hold. The store felt massive once we stepped inside. I remember the smell. Old lumber, plastic wrappers, maybe something decaying deeper in. We kept close, moved slow, flashlights low. Brooke cleared the left aisles. Luis and Marcus swept right. I checked the break room and vending machines. Found 2 bottles of water and a pack of crushed granola bars. That first night we blocked off a corner with soil bags and plastic shelving and tried to sleep in turns. We didn't talk much. Everyone just lay there with their bags under their heads, pretending the creaks overhead were just the wind. We buried the only body we found, a former employee near the checkout lanes. He had no bite marks, just an empty bottle next to him and a note we didn't read aloud. Carmen wrapped him in a tarp, and we carried him out through the garden exit. Marcus dug the hole himself. No one said anything. Riley hasn't asked another question since. She just keeps her eyes on the fence and holds the scope steady. I can see the tension in her shoulders, the kind that doesn't come from one bad week. She's been on the move a while, probably had to step over people she knew. Everyone who survives long enough ends up doing that. She asks where the rest of our group is now. I tell her the truth. Some of us are still here. Marcus handles tools, structure, barricades. Omar figured out how to get power running off propane when the solar fails. Carmen tracks water and food. Brooke runs perimeter. Luis keeps our vehicles running. The twins help wherever they're told. Kira runs meds and sanitation. A few more handle scouting, quiet runs, repairs. Some didn't make it. We don't list names unless there's a reason. Out past the broken sedan near the garden cage, I catch movement. I nudge Riley. She lifts the scope. 2 infected. Both slow. One's dragging a foot. The other's hunched sideways, like its spine locked halfway through a fall. We don't say anything. Just keep watching as they brush along the fence. They sniff the air, lose interest, and shuffle back toward the drainage ditch behind the lumber gate. It happens a few times a week now. They come, they linger, they move on. Unless they smell blood or hear shouting, they don't linger, at least not the slow ones. The fast ones are different. When they show up, we shut down everything and stay silent. We haven't had one of those in a while. Maybe too many burned out. Maybe they moved east. We don't rely on luck either way. Riley asks if we've ever had a full breach. I shake my head. Not full, but close. A few months back, the garden fence gave when someone zip-tied a panel instead of bolting it. 2 infected got in before Brooke spotted them. We used forklifts to box them in and handled it fast, but that was a wake-up call. We reinforced everything after that. No more shortcuts. Marcus welded rebar crossbars over every vulnerable section. No one questioned it. She asks how I became the one who scouts and plans all the routes. I tell her I'm not in charge of anything. I just walked out one morning, and some people decided to come with me. That's all. I don't give orders. I just try not to get anyone else killed. The wind picks up a bit. I hear it scraping across the garden rooftop. Somewhere behind me, a rat trap clicks. That'll be Omar's problem during the morning check. Riley yawns and pulls her hood up tighter. I tell her we're done in 10 minutes. She nods but doesn't say anything back. Eventually she climbs down the ladder and heads back into the roof hatch. I wait a little longer before following. Not because I think anything's coming, just to give the silence a little more room. There's a kind of balance to keeping this place running. You don't push it. You let the air settle, then you move. When we first got here, we didn't have a plan. I picked this place because it was still standing, and it wasn't completely picked over. The front doors were intact. The fence around the garden center hadn't collapsed yet, and there were no obvious signs of looting. The other stores in the strip had already been hit, glass broken, shelves emptied, sometimes burned. But this one looked untouched. Maybe people assumed it was locked down, or maybe the infected just hadn't wandered in yet. Either way, we had a clean entry, and that was enough for us to take a shot. We didn't have much gear. What we brought from the school was mostly backpacks, some utility tools, and a few salvaged kits from the nurse's office. Marcus had a folding saw and an old framing hammer he refused to lend out. Carmen carried bleach tablets and bandages. Luis had a tire iron and a roll of duct tape. The rest of us just brought whatever we could carry. A lot of it turned out to be useless. School notebooks, chargers with no power source, half-crushed snacks. But the effort mattered more than the items. It meant people were still trying to live, not just run. Marcus took one look at the layout inside and immediately started pointing out pressure points. He showed us where we could reinforce the side entrance, where the back gate was weakest, how we could seal off certain aisles as internal fallback zones. He said the first mistake people make is trying to lock everything down. Too many doors, too many windows, too many vulnerabilities. He told us to pick the strongest corners and turn them into control zones. We listened. We started with the contractor door. He taught us how to wedge flat stock steel across the frame and how to angle it so the door couldn't flex inward. We didn't have proper welding tools at first, so we drilled through brackets using hand tools, anchoring them with lag bolts and concrete screws. It was slow, painfully slow, but it worked. We slept in shifts inside a boxed-off section near aisle 3, used pallets and bags of mulch to close off the space. One entrance, no visibility from the main floor. That first week, every night felt like a trap waiting to spring. We didn't know if the infected would find us. We didn't know how sound traveled in that space. Someone always stayed up, listening, staring through gaps in the pallet wall. It wore us down, but nobody broke. We took turns because we had to. The first thing we truly ran out of was water. The vending machines only had maybe 6 or 7 bottles total, and they were gone in 2 days. After that, we drained the employee break room sink and filled cooking pots with whatever came out. Then nothing. The building didn't have a tanked water system. It was fed through city mains, and those had stopped functioning weeks ago. That's when Carmen took over. She rigged up a collection system from the roof using rain tarps and plastic tubing we found in the plumbing section. It wasn't perfect, but it gave us something to work with. When rain came, we'd scramble to fill barrels. We used shop vac canisters, clean buckets, even mop bins if they weren't cracked. Filtering was the next hurdle. Carmen and Kira worked out a 3-stage process using carbon filters and slow drip gravity flow. Took hours to make a few gallons, but we didn't care. We rationed carefully. Everyone was given strict limits. If you used too much, you took the next supply run solo. Nobody wanted that, and nobody ever argued about it. Food was harder. The store only had vending machine snacks and a small concession counter with a few expired microwavable burritos in a broken freezer. We scavenged the surrounding buildings, auto shops, a shuttered garden center, a nail salon, and a mattress warehouse. But those runs gave us very little. The garden center had a sealed case of sunflower seeds and a few dusty boxes of protein powder. We rationed it like gold. Carmen made a spreadsheet by hand on an old clipboard and taped it to the wall. Meals were organized. Nobody ate outside of assigned time. If you skipped a meal, it went to the next person in line. No trading. No favorites. We took turns going further out once we had better routes scouted. Brooke and Omar led most of those runs. She was quick, knew how to move quietly. Omar was good with doors and had a steady hand with tools. Luis drove when we had fuel. Found an old work truck behind a garage that still had keys taped under the bumper. That truck saved us more than once. The first time someone tried to take the place from us, we weren't ready. They came around mid-afternoon, 3 of them, wearing tool belts and contractor gear. Said they were from another group looking to combine efforts. But their story didn't line up. One kept watching our generator cables. Another was scanning the doors while he talked. The third circled the building on his own. That's what made us sure. Nobody splits during negotiations unless they're trying to test your blind spots. We didn't confront them. We let them look around the outside. Didn't unlock anything. Didn't step out. Let them get bored and walk. But that night we reinforced everything. We moved 2 sets of shelves to block the garden entrance from the inside, added triple bar crosspieces to the main doors, and rewired the forklift gate with metal cabling. Luis suggested running nails through metal pipe brackets and securing them across the bottom of the front entrance, just in case someone tried to kick it in. We did it the same night. Next day, we started building what we now call the inner wall. It's not pretty, but it holds. Steel shelving bolted together across the center of the store, forming a spine that gives us fallback positions. Behind that wall is our real safe zone. We sleep there. We store most supplies there. All exits lead back to that central space. It took weeks to build. Marcus insisted we overbuild it. Double bolts on every plate. Rebar anchors through the floor where possible. Heavy polycarbonate cutouts for visibility. We used up nearly everything in the fastener aisle, and we're still short on certain bolt sizes. Weapons were another story. We didn't come here armed. Most of what we had were blunt tools, hammers, crowbars, pry bars. Luis carried a metal shovel he sharpened along the edges. Marcus found a nail gun that still worked, but the compressor failed the first week. Omar later got a generator rigged up and salvaged a portable air tank. After that, we started using the nail gun for short-range deterrence. It's loud, clunky, and unreliable, but it hits hard enough to make someone duck. We don't rely on it for anything critical. Brooke carries a rebar spear she welded to a floor jack shaft. She keeps it razor sharp and doesn't let anyone touch it. I've seen her use it twice on the infected. Once when one crawled in through a cracked fence panel, and again when a bloated one tried pushing through a broken loading dock. She didn't flinch either time. We found a locked tool cage in the back of the warehouse section. Took days to get it open without cutting torches. But once we did, it changed everything. The general area only had basic tools and test samples. But there was everything we really needed and even more. There were boxes of impact tools, battery drills, bolt cutters, pry bars, hatchets, work lights, gloves, harnesses. We re-inventoried it, put everything back in neat rows, and built a log system. Nothing leaves the cage without being signed out. Everyone knows this rule. It's the only reason we've held out this long. Structure. That cage became the heart of the store, and for weeks it kept us busy. Every job had a tool, and Marcus drilled into us that putting it back mattered more than finishing the job fast. We grew confident in a way that probably made us careless. Confidence is good until it blinds you. We thought the walls and gates were strong enough. We thought the infected were the only danger. Tonight proved us wrong. It started in the evening, when watch changed over. Luis had taken the early perimeter, and Riley was meant to relieve him just before dark. She came back quiet, said she saw nothing. The lot looked empty, the fence untouched. We locked the hatch and started rotating people into tasks. Carmen prepped a water boil. Marcus and I shifted stock from aisle 6 to reinforce the inner barricade. The others sorted fasteners by size, logging what was left. Nothing unusual. We didn't know 2 men had been circling us all day, waiting for night. The breach wasn't loud. That's what haunts me. No clanging metal, no broken glass, no warning. They slipped through the side fencing near the garden section, where the panels didn't quite line up. We checked it every morning, thought it was fine. Apparently it wasn't. They came in silent, moved past our spotters, and went straight to the guard position. The first person they caught was Marcus. He didn't even get a chance to shout. One had a knife, the other a hammer. By the time Carmen heard the scuffle, Marcus was already gone. Carmen tried to fight them off with a wrench, but she didn't last long. Luis rushed from the back and swung his tire iron, but the knife man went low and caught him under the ribs. It was over before any of us fully understood what was happening. Brooke charged with her rebar spear and managed to drive the second man back, but she didn't realize the first had already circled behind her. She went down hard. After that, it was chaos. The adults we leaned on most, Marcus, Carmen, Luis, were gone in minutes. That left us kids. 5 of us standing in a hardware store in the middle of the night, with 2 killers inside and no one else to stop them. I had never killed anything human before. I'd fought infected, shoved them off with crowbars, hit skulls with enough force to stop them moving. But this was different. These men weren't mindless. They were breathing, moving, thinking, and they wanted everything we had. They weren't desperate. They weren't starving. They just wanted to take. I don't remember making a decision. My hands just went for the first thing I could grab, one of the heavy pry bars leaning against the cage. I heard the man with the knife dragging something metal across the concrete, taunting us. He thought we'd fold. Maybe he thought we'd beg. He didn't know we'd been running drills for months, rehearsing breach responses, practicing fallback moves even though we hated it. When he came around the corner, I swung as hard as I could. The bar connected with his temple, and he dropped. Just like that. No sound, no struggle. 1 second alive, the next not. It felt wrong immediately. Not like with the infected, where you already know there's nothing left of them. This was different. His face was still human, his eyes open, staring. I couldn't look for long, but I couldn't turn away either. That was the moment I realized surviving isn't clean. It never was. The second man didn't freeze. He charged straight at Omar, who had nothing but a screwdriver in his hand. Omar would have been done, but Ella stepped out from behind the cage with one of the hatchets we'd stored. She hit him in the side of the neck before he could reach Omar. He went down thrashing, but she didn't stop until he was still. It took her 3 strikes. After the last one, she dropped the hatchet and backed away, her hands shaking so hard she couldn't unclench her fingers. None of us said anything. We just listened to the sound echoing in the rafters until it finally went quiet. The store didn't feel safe anymore after that. We'd spent months building walls, welding braces, logging every nut and bolt, thinking we could keep the world out. Tonight reminded us that nothing stops a determined person. Panels can be climbed, gates can be pried, and silence can mask murder. We dragged the bodies into the garden cage and locked the gate. Nobody wanted to bury them. Nobody wanted to touch them again. We just sealed it and walked away. Now it's only 5 of us. Me, Brooke, Omar, Ella and Riley. Everyone else is gone. The ones who kept order, who rationed food, who fixed what we couldn't, who kept us steady. They're not coming back. And we're left inside a warehouse stacked with tools, standing in the shadow of everything we thought we'd built. The first hours after it ended, we didn't talk. We sat in the barricaded inner wall and listened for sounds outside. The infected were moving along the fence line, maybe drawn by the noise, but none tried hard enough to push through. We waited until dawn before we even checked the perimeter again. Every shadow looked wrong. Every creak felt like another attack. We learned quickly what had to change. Night watch doubled, even though there were fewer of us. No one patrols alone now. The garden fence got reinforced with bolted plates, not zip ties. We dragged pallets of pavers to the weak spots and pinned them with pipes. The back lot, where they snuck in, is now lit with 2 work lamps run off the inverter. It drains the batteries faster, but it's better than silence and blind corners. Weapons are no longer treated as tools. Before, we locked everything in the cage and rationed it carefully. Now each of us carries one at all times. Brooke keeps her rebar spear. Omar carries the hatchet Ella used. Riley walks with a hammer and doesn't let it go. Ella has the backup pry bar, the smaller one. I keep the long one, the same that I used to drop the first man. It's not a choice I made. It's just mine now. I don't feel proud of it, but it's the only thing that makes sense. Food's still limited, but at least we know the system. Carmen left her logs, and we follow them line by line. Rice every other day, cans stretched into meals with powdered protein. No one complains. Hunger doesn't matter when fear already takes up most of your stomach. Water's the same routine. Catchment on the roof, slow filters, chlorine tablets. We don't waste, not after what happened. We also know the visitors will come again. 2 men don't travel alone without backup somewhere. We don't know when or how, but we're sure. We're planning for it now. Barriers inside barriers, fallback points, escape routes in case the whole place gets overrun. We don't have markers to guide the builds anymore, so we figure it out as we go. Mistakes will cost more now, but we can't afford to freeze. The 5 of us take turns in the tool cage. We don't just check out drills and wrenches anymore. We're cataloging blades, metal stock, anything that can be turned into defense. We welded plates to old shopping carts and turned them into movable shields. Omar's been experimenting with wiring up a trip alarm using spare extension cords and work lights. It's crude, but if it buys us a minute, that's a minute we wouldn't have had. I keep thinking back to Marcus telling us structure was the only reason we lasted. He was right, but now the structure feels thin. It's only as strong as the 5 of us holding it. No adults left to settle fights. No steady hand to tell us which bolt to use. No one to break ties when we argue. It's just us, kids with blood on our hands, trying not to lose the last place we have. I know what we're supposed to do next. Keep the store sealed, keep building, keep running supply routes. But everything feels different after tonight. We defended ourselves, but we also killed for the first time. I can still see the man's eyes when I hit him. Not empty like the infected. Not gone. Just human. That doesn't leave your head. The hardware store still stands, and the walls are still up, but the weight shifted. The infected aren't the only threat anymore. People are. People who've stopped caring. People who'll take what they want no matter the cost. And now, whether we wanted to or not, we've become part of that. 5 of us. Armed with tools and scraps, living in the shadow of the choices we've already made. We talked about leaving. It came up the night after the attack when none of us could sleep. We sat inside the barricaded core with the work lamps turned low, staring at the shelves and the cracks in the concrete. Ella said maybe we should head west. Maybe there's still order near the freeway camps. Brooke shut that down quick. She said those camps weren't order. They were cages where people rotted while soldiers waited for orders that never came. Omar asked if we should try south toward the river. Riley asked if we even knew what we were looking for. I didn't say much. All I knew was none of us had anywhere to go, so the talk ended with nothing decided. For now, we stay. The truth is, we're too weak to run far. Food and water will run out if we don't plan better, and we know it. That's where the conversation finally landed. If we stay, we need more than just the shelves and barricades. We need options, a backup base, a way to move water without breaking our backs, a way to stretch what little we have. Those became the priorities, not dreams about someplace else. We drew the first plan on a piece of plywood with chalk. 2 of us would head into the city and scout. Small grocery stores, maybe family-run markets that weren't as obvious as the big chains. Motels, because sometimes people stockpiled in back rooms or vending machines stayed untouched. Houses on the edges, where doors weren't kicked in yet. We'd check anything that looked like it hadn't burned or been stripped clean. At the same time, the rest of us would start building a cart that could haul water from the river. A wheelbarrow base with reinforced handles, bolted to a frame that could hold one of the large containers. We found a plastic drum in the paint aisle and tested it for leaks. It would be heavy, but better than carrying buckets by hand. Non-potable water was still worth something. Washing, cleaning, mixing cement to seal cracks. Deciding who went was harder. Brooke wanted to lead, of course. She's the most confident outside the walls. She's quick, steady, and doesn't hesitate. But she's also the only one who really knows how to handle the spear she built. Losing her would mean losing a frontline defense. Riley volunteered right away, maybe out of guilt, maybe to prove she belonged. Omar offered too, since he knows how to open doors quietly and spot useful gear. In the end, we chose Brooke and Omar. They knew how to move together, and the rest of us trusted them to watch each other's backs. Riley didn't argue, but she looked angry when we told her to stay. Ella and I stayed behind to help her with the cart and to hold watch. Brooke and Omar left just after dawn 2 mornings later. We pushed a pallet rack against the inside of the contractor door and unbolted it long enough for them to squeeze through. They wore improvised packs, straps cut from harnesses, patched bags held together with duct tape. Brooke carried her rebar spear and a short hatchet at her belt. Omar had a pry bar strapped to his shoulder and a satchel with the portable radio. They promised to stay within 3 miles and return before sundown. We told them twice not to risk noise, not to test doors that looked barricaded, not to stop for anything that felt wrong. They nodded and slipped out into the lot. We bolted the door behind them, then dragged the pallet back into place. The rest of the day was slow and heavy. Riley and Ella argued over the cart frame. Ella wanted to weld the handles directly to the drum so it couldn't shift. Riley said that would make it impossible to replace if it cracked. I sided with Riley, though I didn't say much about it. We braced the base with angle iron from the shelving aisle, bolted plywood across for stability, and cut down 2 metal handles from a broken dolly. By mid-afternoon, it actually looked like something that could roll. We didn't have a wheel big enough to take rough ground, but we stripped one off an old contractor's wheelbarrow. It squealed loud at first, but grease from the maintenance aisle fixed that. We left it in the corner, waiting for the drum to be strapped on. Late afternoon came and went. We stayed near the contractor door, listening for the knock pattern Brooke promised. The light started to fade, and still nothing. Riley started pacing. Ella kept checking the radio, but there was only static. Every minute felt longer than the last. I started to think maybe they weren't coming back. That's the kind of thought you don't say out loud, but it crawls into your head anyway. We agreed to wait until morning before making a move. Then, just as the street lamps outside caught the last bit of sun, we heard it. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks. The pattern. We pulled the pallet aside and unbolted the door. Brooke and Omar slipped inside, both breathing hard, eyes wide. Omar had blood on his sleeve but no cuts. Brooke's spear tip was bent. She dropped her pack on the floor and leaned against the shelf without a word. They'd made it further than planned, out toward a strip of smaller markets south of the interstate. First place had been burned. The second looked untouched, but inside they found bodies. Not infected, just dead, left to rot. The smell was too much. They grabbed a few cans from the front and left fast. The third place, a corner market wedged between 2 houses, still had shelves standing. It looked like people stripped it quickly, but not clean. They found canned beans, powdered milk, and boxes of crackers. Not much, but enough to make it worth the trip. They also found a whole box of instant noodles in one of the crashed cars. The trouble came near the motel 2 blocks over. They spotted movement in the parking lot. At first they thought it was infected. Then they saw the shapes moving too fast, too deliberate. 3 men, armed, patrolling between the cars. Not soldiers, just survivors with rifles slung over their shoulders. Brooke and Omar dropped flat and crawled behind a dumpster. They watched for a few minutes. The men weren't just passing through. They were guarding something, probably using the motel as a base. One of them started walking toward the dumpster, and that's when Omar cut his arm climbing over the back fence. They ran after that, using alleys to get clear, not stopping until they reached our block. Hearing that confirmed what we already suspected. We're not the only ones trying to carve out space. Others are building their own strongholds, some bigger, some smaller. And if they're armed, if they're organized, then sooner or later paths will cross. We decided right then we'd avoid the motel for good. It wasn't worth the risk. Maybe the small houses nearby, maybe other corners of the strip, but not there. That night, we cooked one of the cans of beans and split it 5 ways. It tasted like metal and salt, but it was food we hadn't had before. We ate in silence, listening to the generator hum and the faint sounds outside. The infected wandered the lot like usual, drawn by smells or shadows, but they didn't press hard against the gates. For once, the night passed without incident. None of us slept well, but at least we weren't starving. The next morning, we strapped the drum to the cart. Took us 3 tries to lash it down with chains and ratchet straps before it felt solid. Brooke tested it by dragging it across the garden center and down the ramp to the back lot. The squeal echoed, but not enough to carry far. It would work. We planned to test it on the river run within a few days. Not for drinking water yet, just to see if it could be hauled full. Even dirty water could keep us alive longer by letting us clean, mix cement, and maybe even start planting something if we dared. 2 days later, it was my turn to join a raid. Riley came with me. Brooke said she trusted us to move quiet together, and Omar stayed behind to monitor the inverter and finish sealing the garden gate. We went out just after dawn, following the alleys north toward a block of houses we hadn't touched yet. The streets were scattered with wrecked cars, some burned, others stripped down to frames. We moved slow, stopping at every corner, listening before crossing. The neighborhood looked abandoned, but that never means safe. The first house we checked had already been picked clean. Kitchen cupboards hung open, mattresses torn apart, even the light bulbs gone. The second house had a basement full of mold and broken furniture. Nothing else. The third, though, gave us something we hadn't even dared hope for. In the upstairs bedroom closet, Riley pulled down a shoebox that rattled heavier than it should. Inside were 2 pistols wrapped in an old towel, with 3 boxes of ammunition taped together. The guns weren't pristine, dusty, dry, but intact. One looked like it had barely been fired. We stared at them longer than we should have, both of us knowing how much this changed things. Up until then, everything we carried was blunt force. Tools, spears, hammers. Now we had real weapons. We didn't waste time celebrating. We wrapped them back in the towel, stuffed the ammo into our packs, and moved. On the way back, we picked up whatever else we could: cans of vegetables, a broken radio, a coil of rope. When we finally reached the contractor door again and knocked the pattern, Brooke's face went pale when she saw what we brought in. She didn't even ask at first. She just nodded and told us to lock everything down. That night, we cleaned the pistols with rags and motor oil. None of us were experts, but we figured out the basics. The magazines fed, the slides cycled, the chambers looked clear. Omar read the calibers stamped on the boxes and sorted them into separate piles. We agreed not to waste a single round unless it was survival. No practice shots, no warnings. Every bullet had to matter. The pistols changed the way we thought about defense. Up until then, every barricade had been built assuming close contact. We reinforced doors, layered shelves, and planned fallback points. Now we could think about keeping distance. We gathered ready-cut lumber from the warehouse section, stacks of plywood and 2x4s that had sat untouched since before the outbreak. Using those, we built a second skin along the inside walls, extra layers braced with screws and metal brackets. It wasn't pretty, but it thickened everything. Every door got a reinforced frame, every window a cross brace. Even if someone breached the glass, they'd still face solid wood behind it. On the roof, we finally did what we'd talked about for months. We built defensive points along the edges, using sheets of plywood and corrugated metal angled into makeshift shields. We piled old pallets, trash bins, and broken shelving around them so it looked like junk from a distance. Anyone watching from outside would just see clutter. From behind, we had covered positions where we could watch the lot or fire if we had to. The roof had always been one of our weakest points. Too open, too exposed. Now it felt like something we could actually hold. None of us had experience with strategy. We weren't soldiers, but the work gave us focus. Hammering wood into place, dragging sheets of metal up the ladder, stacking bags of soil to weigh down barriers. It felt like we were building more than just walls. We were building time. Every layer meant more warning, more seconds to react. Every corner we fortified bought us one more chance to survive the next raid. The real surprise came when Omar figured out how to start an old garden tractor that had been sitting in the outdoor supply section since the first week. It was small, meant for landscaping, with a gas engine that looked rusted to death. He spent hours hunched over it with a socket set, pulling spark plugs, cleaning the carburetor, testing fuel lines. I thought he was wasting time. Then, one afternoon the thing coughed to life and rattled loud enough to make us all freeze. For a second we panicked, thinking the sound would draw every infected for blocks. But nothing came. The lot stayed still. Omar grinned for the first time in weeks. That tractor gave us more options than we'd had in months. With a little tuning, it was strong enough to push and tow. We tested it by hooking chains to an abandoned car in the back lot. Slowly, grinding loud, the tractor dragged it across the asphalt. We realized we could use it to move every vehicle in the area. Cars that had been scattered and blocking our sightlines could now be pulled closer, parked in rows, turned into a barrier wall around the building. Brooke called it the outer ring. It meant no one could drive straight at us anymore. No easy ramming through doors or fences. The cars became our first line, the walls our second. Over the next week, we worked non-stop. Riley and Ella scouted houses for food and water, while Brooke and I moved cars with the tractor. Some were too heavy, their tires locked, but we learned to drag them sideways if we had to. We built a tight ring near the contractor lot and staggered others across the front to block angles. From the roof, the place looked less like a store and more like a fortress patched together from wreckage. It was ugly, but it worked. The infected tested us twice while we worked. First time, 3 of them wandered from the highway and pressed against the fence. Riley handled it with the pry bar while Brooke held the spear. The second time was worse. 6 or 7 came in from the east lot just as we were chaining a car into place. We had to retreat inside, fire up the generator, and use the work lamps to draw them away from the weak gate. It took nearly an hour before they lost interest. We didn't use the pistols. Not yet. The noise would bring more than we could handle. By the end of that week, the store felt different. Stronger, yes, but also heavier. Every wall, every barricade, every car dragged into place reminded us of why it was needed. We weren't just keeping the infected out anymore. We were preparing for people with guns, people who'd already shown they were willing to kill. The pistols gave us confidence, but also responsibility. A single mistake with them could bring a swarm, or worse, another fight with survivors. It was Riley who first suggested going back to the school. None of us liked the idea, but she said if we wanted to know what the future looked like, we had to look at the past. If anyone had survived there, if the camp was still standing, we needed to know. Maybe there would be food hidden away, maybe even medical supplies. The thought of going back made my stomach twist, but part of me wanted to see it too, wanted to know for sure what had become of the place we once thought was safe. We argued for most of a night about who would go. Brooke said she needed to stay here because she knew the layout of our defenses better than anyone else. Ella wanted to stay too. She was one of the only ones who could weld, and we had half-finished plating along the garden fence that couldn't wait. Omar was still tuning the tractor and insisted it had to be watched constantly to make sure the engine didn't seize. That left me and Riley. Neither of us liked being paired, but it was fair. One pistol came with us. One stayed behind with Brooke. She would carry it on watch while Ella welded and Omar worked. The plan was simple. 2 would build, 1 would guard, and we'd rotate every 3 hours until nightfall. We left early, just after sunrise. The air was still, and the streets smelled of smoke drifting in from the east. I carried the pistol tucked into my waistband and a pry bar across my shoulder. Riley had the spare hatchet and a small pack for anything we might bring back. The walk was familiar. I'd done it dozens of times in the first months, when slipping out of the school perimeter meant freedom for a few hours. Now every turn felt different. The silence was heavier. The streets were more cluttered. Whole blocks were just burned shells. The school came into view around mid-morning. The outer fence had collapsed in 2 places. The gates bent outward where something heavy had forced them. The football field, once lit by towers of floodlights, was overgrown with weeds pushing through cracked asphalt. The smell hit us before we reached the main entrance. It wasn't faint either. It was thick, layered, old rot mixed with something fresh. Riley pulled her shirt over her mouth. I gripped the pry bar tighter. The first infected we saw was just inside the main lot. It wore a shredded uniform, one of the guards from the old perimeter. Its helmet was gone, jaw half hanging off, but the body was still moving, dragging its boots across the ground. I raised the pistol but lowered it again. Firing here would only draw more. Riley stepped forward and swung the hatchet down. It collapsed, and we pushed deeper. Inside the gym, everything was wrong. The taped-off squares on the floor where families once slept were black with dried stains. The bleachers were torn apart. Every door was cracked open, hinges bent, locks smashed, and the noise started. Low groans echoing from the hallways, the unmistakable shuffle of dozens of infected moving in the shadows. We froze, counted at least 10 shapes in the far corner, then saw more spilling through a broken doorway. The school wasn't a camp anymore, it was a nest. We didn't push further. There was nothing left to salvage. No food could have survived in that stench. No medicine would be untouched after months of chaos. Everyone who had stayed was gone, their bodies either torn apart or walking in the dark halls. Riley muttered that we had to leave, and I didn't argue. We backed out through the broken doors and moved fast down the side street, not stopping until the school was out of sight. The walk back was harder. Not because of the infected, We avoided them with alley routes and silence. But because of the weight of what we'd seen, the school had been our last memory of a system, of order. Soldiers, schedules, announcements. Now it was just another ruin. It felt like the final proof that nothing else was coming to save us. No helicopters, no convoys, no rescue. Just pockets of survivors, each on their own. When we returned, Brooke met us at the contractor door. She saw our faces and didn't even ask. She just stepped aside and let us in. Omar had grease all over his hands from the tractor, and Ella was finishing another weld on the fence plate. They didn't need details. They already knew what the answer would be. That night we ate crackers Riley had found on the way back and split a bottle of filtered water. No one spoke much. The generator hummed low in the background. Then, just after dark, the silence broke. Gunshots. Not a single crack but bursts. Fast, repeating, echoing across the city. We froze, staring at each other. Brooke climbed to the roof with the pistol and I followed. From there we could see it. Flashes of light in the distance, near the industrial district. Dozens of them, scattered across rooftops and streets, like a storm of muzzle fire. The sound carried for nearly an hour. Sometimes steady bursts, sometimes single shots, sometimes silence followed by another wave. Whoever it was, they had firepower far beyond us. It wasn't scavengers with pistols or raiders with rifles. It was organized, heavy. Riley whispered that maybe it was the military, but even she didn't sound like she believed it. If the military still had that kind of strength, why would they be fighting here, in a dead city? We stayed on the roof until the flashes finally faded and the last echoes died out. The city went quiet again. Too quiet. No moans, no shuffling in the lot, nothing but the wind over the barricades. We climbed down without speaking. No one wanted to guess out loud what it meant. Back inside, we set the pistols on the table and stared at them. A week ago, we'd felt stronger just holding them. Tonight, they looked like toys compared to what we'd just seen. Whatever was out there had weapons, ammunition, maybe vehicles. We had hammers, axes, and 2 handguns we barely knew how to use. It wasn't a fair fight. If they turned their attention our way, no barricade of wood and cars would hold. A few more weeks passed in a blur of work and exhaustion. Every day was about adding something, fixing something, or rationing something. We expanded the barricades with more lumber and sheet metal, dragging supplies up ladders to the roof so we could keep watch from higher points. Brooke drilled us on rotations, 3-hour shifts, no excuses. Ella welded a crossbar over the garden gate so it couldn't be pried open again. Omar managed to tune the tractor enough that it started easier, though the noise still made us all nervous every time it sputtered awake. We managed to get more water from the river. The cart worked, even if hauling it back left us all sore and filthy. The non-potable barrels let us clean tools, patch cracks, and even mix cement to reinforce the weakest points of our barricades. It wasn't perfect, but it kept us moving forward. The rain helped too. The fog rolled in thick one morning and stayed for 3 days straight. The city disappeared in it, shapes vanishing 20 feet out. We didn't dare go on raids during that time. Sound carried strangely, and visibility was useless. But the fog brought rain, and the tarps on the roof filled the barrels enough that we didn't have to drag the cart as much. It gave us a few days of breathing room. Food was still the tightest part of survival. Every raid felt like gambling, and most houses were stripped bare or too dangerous to linger in. We had one close call when Brooke and Omar ran into a man in an alley, a former cop judging by the faded uniform. He was drunk, swinging his pistol around and yelling at shadows. He shouted loud enough that 6 infected turned the corner. Instead of running, he laughed and waved at us where we were hiding behind a dumpster, like he was glad someone was watching. Then they tore him apart while he grinned through blood and screams. We slipped away, sick to our stomachs. Brooke said nothing the rest of the night. Tension inside the store built with every passing week. We had weapons and walls, but that didn't mean we felt safe. Every creak at night had us on edge. Every shout in the distance made us freeze. The flashes we'd seen weeks ago haunted me most. If whoever had all that firepower decided to sweep this part of the city, We wouldn't last. So we worked harder. We built second barriers inside the contractor bay. We dragged shelving into tighter choke points. We hammered scrap metal into plates and covered the roof posts with plywood to break silhouettes. None of it felt like enough, but doing nothing wasn't an option. The closest I've come to losing Riley happened on one of those raids. We'd gone 2 blocks west to check a row of houses we'd skipped earlier. The street was quiet, windows black, doors hanging open. We moved slow, checking every corner. Riley carried the hatchet and I had the pistol. She rounded the corner of a porch and froze. An infected stumbled out from behind the shed, thin as bones but moving fast. She raised the hatchet, but it slipped from her grip when the handle caught on the railing. She had nothing. I don't know what came over me, but I rushed forward, grabbed the length of pipe she'd dropped earlier, and slammed it across the infected's chest. It staggered back, clawing, still reaching for her. I shoved with everything I had, and because it was thin, almost skeletal, it toppled into the grass instead of dragging me down with it. I pulled the pistol and fired. First shot missed, second hit its shoulder, third clipped its jaw, fourth finally tore through its skull, and it went still. Smoke curled out of the barrel while my hands shook so bad I nearly dropped the gun. Riley grabbed it from me before I could, her face pale and tight. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She knew I'd saved her, but she also knew how close we'd come to losing her. If that thing had been stronger, if I'd missed again, it would have ended differently. We left the street right after. No supplies, no searching. Nothing was worth pushing our luck. That night back at the store, I couldn't stop replaying it. The way its face looked so human up close. The way the shots went wild before I finally hit the mark. The way Riley's breath shook afterward, but she kept walking like she was fine. Everyone thanked me quietly, but I didn't feel like I'd done anything right. All I'd done was make a mess and get lucky. Still, it reminded me of something Marcus used to say before he was killed, that survival wasn't about being the strongest, it was about reacting first and fast. Maybe he was right. The next morning, Brooke assigned new rules. Nobody goes alone, not even to the nearby alleys. Pistols only leave the table when one group is on a raid and one person is on watch. Ammunition is logged down to the round, and most important, nobody hesitates when an infected gets close. No saving bullets, no waiting for a better shot. If one's on top of you, you end it fast or it ends you. We kept to those rules as if our lives depended on them, because they did. Each day felt more disciplined, like a rhythm we could trust. But the unease about the city never left us, and the memory of that gunfire kept pushing into our thoughts. Brooke decided that if we wanted to sleep without always staring at the ceiling, we had to check the motel again. It was too close to ignore, and the idea of armed survivors settling there without us knowing was worse than walking blind into danger. The first time we checked, the lot was empty. The cars were in the same positions we'd seen weeks earlier. Dust settled thick on the windshields. No movement, no sound, not even infected. We didn't stay long, just watched from the alley and moved on. 2 days later we returned, coming from a different angle. Again, nothing. Windows were broken in places, doors hung loose, but no signs of life. Riley whispered that maybe whoever lived there had moved on, but Brooke didn't believe it. She said the motel was too solid a position to abandon without a reason. On the third visit, we decided to go inside. We approached through the side stairwell, weapons ready. The air smelled stale, thick with mildew and something sharper underneath. The hallway carpets were damp, the wallpaper peeling. The first 2 rooms were empty, stripped of bedding and supplies. The third was worse. Inside, we found 2 bodies, not infected, dead from gunshots. One lay across the bed, the other slumped against the wall. Whoever shot them had taken their weapons and most of their gear. Bloodstains marked the floor in long streaks, like someone had been dragged. In the corner, 2 infected corpses lay twisted, their skulls smashed with something blunt. There had been a fight, messy and fast, but it hadn't lasted long. We searched the other rooms. Some showed signs of being lived in. Empty cans, blankets, stacked bottles. but nothing recent. No heat, no fire, no food left behind. Whoever had been here was gone, whether they left by choice or by force. The silence of the motel halls pressed heavy. Even the infected stayed clear, as if something about the place warned them off. We left quickly, no supplies worth carrying, nothing but the memory of the bodies and the thought of what it meant. There were armed people in the city, better equipped than us, willing to kill and strip the dead. Maybe they fought among themselves. Maybe they fought another group. Maybe the infected tore through their defenses. We didn't know. All we knew was the motel was no longer a threat, at least not for now. Back at the store, life settled into the same rhythm. Fortifications became thicker, the water barrels heavier with each rainfall, and food came in from raids a little at a time. The cart made river runs manageable, and when the tractor worked, we could move cars into tighter rows, sealing the perimeter even better. It wasn't perfect, but it gave us the sense that each week we held on meant we'd hold on for one more after. Nights were the hardest. We'd take shifts on the roof, looking over the lot, listening for movement. Sometimes it was only the shuffle of a single infected, bumping against the cars until it grew bored. Other nights we saw flickers of light far away, fires, flashlights, maybe muzzle flashes. Always distant, always unreachable. They reminded us we weren't alone in the city, but not in any comforting way. The fog came back one morning, rolling in thicker than before. We stayed inside, surviving on what we'd stored. The walls dripped with condensation, and the aisles smelled of damp soil and rust. It was the kind of weather that made you restless, staring at the same corners, hearing every creak of metal and wood. We worked on what we could, tightening bolts, welding scrap into extra plates, sorting nails and screws by size so nothing would be wasted. Survival became as much about staying busy as it was about keeping safe. One night during that fog, I woke to Riley whispering my name. She was at the edge of the pallet wall, pointing toward the door. Faint noises, too faint for most, but clear enough once you listened. Voices, distant, muffled, carried by the heavy air. Not close, but not far either. Brooke came up from the other side, pistol in hand. We all listened together until the voices faded. None of us slept again that night. We never found out who those voices belonged to, but the reminder was sharp. Others were still moving, still fighting, still claiming what was left. And at any time, they could stumble on our fortress. That fear never left, but it also hardened us. Every morning after, we checked the perimeter twice, sometimes 3 times. We walked the roofline, we checked the chains, we tested the gates, we drilled on fallback positions. We didn't argue about it. We knew what was at stake. The weeks blended together after that. More raids, more repairs, more nights staring out into the dark. There were close calls, infected slipping past the outer cars, scavengers glimpsed at a distance, but nothing that broke us. The 5 of us endured, kids, barely armed, living in a fortress of steel racks and salvaged wood, holding ground that shouldn't have been ours but was anyway. Every day we lasted made the future a little less impossible. Every barrel filled, every wall reinforced, every night survived. It all added up. I stopped waiting for the military. I stopped hoping for rescue. We weren't waiting anymore. We were surviving. The city around us was falling apart, but inside those barricades, we were still alive. And for now, that was enough. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the stories alive. For now, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and stay alive. Jack's Nightmares, signing off. Until next time, survivor.